actually did one time. A friend went up in a hot air balloon, and we were sort of on the chase thing, and it was like we got lost. I felt so bad. Going for cornfields, you know. I can't turn here. Where do I go? But yeah, it looked like a lot of fun. It looked like a good hobby.
Normal stuff, yeah. Doesn't seem like normal stuff.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Tuesday, October 17th meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission to order. Moorhead Public Service Commission welcomes and encourages customer input on issues listed on the agenda or of general water, electric utility interest, time and commission permitting. Speakers are limited to a 3-minute presentation. Customers wishing to address the commission regarding a specific agenda item will be afforded an opportunity during the discussion of that item. Customers wishing to speak on matters not listed on the agenda will be given the opportunity to do so under the heading Customers to be Heard Recognitions. Each person requesting the opportunity to speak is asked to fill out a request to speak form located on the the counter on the back of the room and present it to the administrative assistant in attendance at the meeting. Any follow-up or feedback will be done by email on anything that cannot be resolved this evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I did that. Approve the agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Duran, seconded by Paulson to approve the meeting's agenda. Discussion, seeing none. Moving on to the roll call vote. It'll be Duran, Paulson,
Yes.
Gilbertson,
Aye.
Thompson, aye. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion by Gilbertson, seconded by Duran to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none. Gilbertson,
Aye.
Paulson,
Aye.
Duran, Thompson, yes. Customers to be heard and/or recognitions. Anybody wishing to address the commission this afternoon? Seeing none, any recognitions, Mr. Schmidt?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have, last week, we had our supervisors essential training with Missouri River. MPS had 8 staff members down there, and they've graduated that. Katie Kemper, Tracy Varberg, Aaron Van Beek, Chris Perlicek, Ryan Nelson, Paul Steffen, Adam Benhart, and Aaron Southard were all in attendance. This was the inaugural year of it. In the past, we've done this with MMUA. It kind of changed, so we've started working with MRES, and actually our electric operations manager, Eric John, was instrumental in putting that curriculum together. So it was a good, overall, it was a good program. The staff liked it, and we've got some kudos back from MRES that they were very engaged and doing some of that relationship building after the training session. So that occurred 4 times over the, I think, April through last week. And so they went down there for a couple days over the last 6 months or so. I just wanted to give them a kudos for that and graduating and that first step. They also have the LEAD program as well too. We have one employee that is working on that one as well, and we'll be sending more staff down next year.
Wonderful. Is this an annual event or an annual training?
Yep, yeah, it's annual training. They try to do it not during the winter season, so they started in that April time frame and then run it till about October. But yeah, so next year we'll be sending more and then continuing on from there.
Great. Number 7, old business. I think several meetings ago we alluded to an HR working group, and so that group is going to be comprised of Mr. Gilbertson, Mary Daly, and the person that is going to be replacing Sebastian. So that will be, that's the group. And is there any questions about that, or do I have to make a motion? I don't think so. Everybody okay? Good. Moving on. Item number 8 is the public hearing, but we're going to skip that until 5:30, and we're moving on to item number 9, which is accept the 2023 electric rate study by MRES. So, Mr. Schmidt, do you want to make the introductions?
Stay online. Do we have anybody online? Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll start this. Typically every 5 years, MPS goes through an electric rate study. On the last year, we completed a water rate study, and that we do every 5 to 7 years. So this is just, again, us trying to make sure that our rates are competitive, our rates are in line, no classes out of order and things like that. So typically we've done this since 2006 timeframe with Missouri River. They typically handle both the water and electric, working with MRES membership on that. Tim Miller is the Director of Rates with MRES, and he'll be providing the rate study update or report tonight. Tim, are you online? Tim, can you hear us? Love technology.
Gotta love it.
Tim, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Tim, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
We're gonna try this on speaker and see if it works. All right, Tim, if you want to start speaking.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm getting a feedback. I wonder if you need to mute the computer source and go with just the one source.
Not working. Mark, do you want to present this? Test. Tim, I'm just going to put you by the commissioners and let you speak to that
Okay.
so they can hear you.
Are they able to see my screen if I share it?
Try it. Yeah, try it. Go ahead. Otherwise, we do have rate study up.
You do? Okay. I can go with what you have and we'll just call out the slides.
Okay.
Are we okay? Are we okay in audio?
You guys hear it? Matt, can you hear it? Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Tim. Try to share your screen.
Okay. Okay, you should be able to see a file now.
Yep, we have it.
Okay. I think we're set then?
Go ahead. Tim. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Okay, I will go to the second slide. Good afternoon. Thanks for allowing me to connect with you virtually. If you cannot hear me at any time, just let me know. And if you have questions, hopefully we can funnel them through staff. I want to go through the slides that you, I think, received in advance. And so on slide 2 here, this is our 6th rate study that we are completing for Moorhead, and I've actually done all of those studies, so I appreciate very much the opportunity to work with you again on rates. We are proposing 2.5% increases over the next 4 years, and I think as I look at all the cost changes going on, both with your power costs and just in the economy and supply costs and everything else, I think that's, relatively modest increases. Certainly, there will be impacts on customers, but we tried to keep the percentage down as low as possible. Is still hearing me okay? Okay. The impacts do vary slightly by customer and class, and so not everyone's going to get exactly the same percentage, but by and large, it's going to be about the same impacts on all customers. You do have seasonal rates, so your rates are higher in the summer months, and that will continue based on your wholesale power costs. And the other thing we wanted to focus on is fixed cost recovery. There are a lot of fixed costs of providing service. We're going to see a slide here in a minute kind of outlining that. And so and demand rates
still echoes through because I have another phone on the other side.
As far as the financial strength policies, That's the other aspect that we really want to key in on. Obviously, you've got a couple important metrics that you use. So debt service coverage, maintaining that above 2, and then days cash on hand, trying to maintain that above 200. And so we'll see some slides here in a minute to show that we are indeed staying above those levels, which again is very important for bond ratings and financing going forward. And finally, you'll see that you still do have very competitive rates that are below the utility medians, and I think will remain below the medians as well. So I think that's the silver lining with all of this, that you maintain some very competitive rates with area utilities. On the next slide, just a little history here for you. A couple key points, taking this back about 35 years to 1988. You can see that you had very nice growth over the 30-year period ending in 2018, about 40% growth. So various, new homes, businesses expanding and all that. 2018 was really your peak, and then you can kind of see a COVID impact in 2020. And really, we're not projecting that you'll get back to that 2018 level by 27. So remaining a little below that peak level. So that's kind of the one key point, is kind of the slowing of growth. A lot of your customers take advantage of energy efficiency programs through MRES, so you're able to use power more effectively and wisely. And so that does have an impact, especially in the last 10 years or so in terms of growth. The other key point with this slide is you can see that WAPA is the bulk of your power supply, especially in earlier years. That's in orange. The MRES slice, if you will, has grown over time. So really that's the role of MRES, is to provide any growth power that you might need. So as you know, your WAPA allocations were fixed. And so, if you look back to say 1978, most of your power would have come from WAPA. Again, over time, MRES has filled in that need for anything that WAPA could not provide. So that's really the role that we play with your power supply. On the next slide, you can see a couple different pie charts. On the left is the projected 24 energy breakdown. You can see just under a half of your power is used by the general service class. Really, that's anyone larger than the size of about a Subway or a similar small restaurant. Anything larger than that would be considered general service in your rate schedule. So that's that biggest piece of the pie there. So they're 49% of your usage. The residential is about 41%. Our typical level is 42% residential. So you're very typical in terms of what share of your sales go to your residential customers. But I've noted here in the bottom that really almost half of your energy is only used by 2% of your customers. So really, it's those 381 general service customers that have the demand meters. They are using the bulk of your power, and certainly your top 5 customers use 25% of your power. So we're mindful of that when we do rate design, making sure that they are paying the rates that they should be. And so that's one point of focus in the rate study as well. Next slide shows the cost breakdown. On the left is the Moorhead Public Service cost breakdown, and then on the right is kind of a typical member average breakdown. You can see that for Moorhead, about 45% of your electric costs are related to purchase power and transmission. So again, that's WAPA, MRES, and then getting the power to Moorhead. Typical level for our members is 55%, so you're just a little bit below that. The piece of the pie that's kind of broken out there is the transfers to the city. You can see that, as you're probably aware, that you are at 21% of the total costs are for the transfer. Our member average is about 6%. So certainly that does make an impact in your rate design, and that's kind of how it's been for many years now as well. Capital expenditures make up about 19%. That's all the money you're investing back into your system in the various projects that we'll look at here in a minute. And then the remaining 15% is on your other operating expenses. So we'll kind of walk through these pieces here in just the next few slides and kind of break down some of these cost changes that you're seeing. Just want to pause here to see if there's any questions or if everything's still coming through okay.
Yep, we're good. Keep going, Tim.
Okay. All right, so on the power supply front, obviously Western Area Power, as you're well aware, increased rates by 16% this year. We are looking at the possibility of another 7% increase in 2025. So that was included in the study. Some estimates they've had is creeping towards 8 or 9%. Obviously, the increase this year was due to the drought. If the drought recedes and the conditions improve, you could see a lower rate in the next few years. So that's kind of the uncertainty, the unknown with WAPA. MRES is also looking at a 2.7% increase next year, which was approved by our board. And our rate plan currently has 5% increases going forward beyond 24. And that is kind of like Moorhead really investing in new facilities. In our case, it's generation facilities and transmission. And so these are really the drivers for this increase, is really bolster our power supply and make sure that we're prepared for the future. Southwest Power Pool, so the high voltage transmission lines coming into town, those costs are going up about 3% a year. Just want to note our rate design there at the bottom. We do have the seasonal rates that were implemented in 2011. So our highest rates are in the summer, lowest rates are in the spring and fall. And then the other new thing that you heard about is time of use energy rates. They were implemented earlier this year. So we have higher rates in certain hours, summer afternoons, winter mornings, late afternoons. Hours when our loads are the highest, hours when market prices are the highest, that's when we charge more for energy to kind of reflect those costs. And so we're trying to send up the proper price signals for customer solar and certainly for electric vehicles that we're expecting here in the future. There's a lot more that could be said about this. It might be something that Moorhead Public Service wants to consider in the future with your new metering that you're installing. I think I'll save that discussion for another day. Again, there's a lot more to be said about time of use, but just wanted to kind of bring that up and bring that to your attention. It's kind of an emerging topic that we'll be looking at more in the future. So this is your historical and forecasted purchase power. Again, taking this back to 2003, you were all the way down at 2.4 cents. WAPA and MRES had a series of increases leading up to a rate of 5 cents in 2016. Since then, you've seen things drop nicely. Both WAPA and MRES have actually had some decreases to the point where last year you're actually back down to 4.4 cents. So a nice drop in power costs there. But unfortunately, we are seeing things go up here in the future. And so this is really what we're planning for in the rate study. Your costs are about 4.6 cents this year, rising up to 5.4 cents by 27. So this is certainly a big driver in the rate increases we're proposing. And we certainly don't know with a crystal ball exactly what's going to happen in the future. We're trying to plan ahead for these rate increases. Actual could come in a little different than projected, but certainly we're trying to be mindful of these changes. Just a footnote there on the bottom, MRES had a power supply refund that was not reflected in the chart. If you put that in there, your costs were actually 4.3 cents in that year, but that was kind of a one-time amount. So these are some of the trends that we're kind of tracking in the rate study. And this is reflected in the study and also in your budget as well. Next topic is transfer. Just wanted to kind of highlight this. We do a survey of about 89 area utilities and calculate their transfer as a percentage of operating revenues. And then we kind of track and benchmark that against other utilities. So you can see here, the top 10 utilities in our comparison are the brown bars on the right. Moorhead Public Service actually comes in fourth highest there at 20.9% over the last 4 years. And then APPA, the national organization, does their own median that they calculate, and they're coming up with about 6% for public power nationwide. Our median is just under that, 5.7% for our members and the utilities we track. And then that yellow bar there is the investor-owned utility median. That also is calculated by APPA. And so obviously investor-owned utilities like Xcel Energy pay taxes, state and local taxes. And so they're coming up with a 5% figure for them. So I think the important point here is just that public power does pay back to cities. Obviously, you make a tremendous contribution to the general government to allow services to continue. And so that's really what we're kind of highlighting here in this chart, is kind of where you rank and where you stand with other utilities. On the next sheet, then moving into capital expenditures, this is coming from your budget file and the information that staff has provided. Total of $70 million over the next 5 years, including this year. Obviously, the biggest amount there is your substation and transformer project at $32.5 million. A good share of that will be recoverable through SPP. So that's the good news, is that we have included some revenues here in a few years coming back to Moorhead as a reimbursement for some of those costs. So that's the good news on that project. As far as routine projects coming in at about $2.6 million. Your master plan projects and feeders at 11.3, and then you've got the metering and all the other items there as well. As far as financing for the capital expenditures, again, this is coming from your budget plan, and I think this is a good mix of debt and cash reserves. So you can see about 38 million would come from debt and about 30 million from cash. You might also receive a little bit of grant funding, which could impact some of the projects that you do or don't do. And then, of course, you got about $1 million in insurance and MnDOT reimbursement as well. So that's kind of the financing piece of how you're going to pay for these capital expenditures. And again, a lot of investment back into the system, which I think is certainly good that you're trying to keep the system up to date and prepared for the future. So then this slide then kind of shows the cost changes in a high level. Obviously, there's a lot of numbers behind this in the study, but you can see on the revenue side at the top, revenues are forecasted to go up by about 8.1 million over 5 years based on proposed rates. That includes your metered sales, which is the rate sales that you get. And then the other revenues is going up for a couple different reasons. You're receiving higher generation payments from MRES, and then also those transmission revenues that you're going to get back as well. So that's a nice increase of 2.6 million there. So that's the revenue side of thing. You can see moving down to purchase power. That's the biggest item going up about 3.7 million over 5 years. Transfers are going up slightly, about 800,000. Other operating at about 1.2, and then of course your debt service is more than doubling with all the new projects that are going on. And so it's not always that the numbers work out exactly this way, but really kind of tallying up your costs, they're going up by about 8.1 million as well. And so this is kind of falling in line with what the rate plan is showing. What we're trying to do is really to increase your revenues to make sure that we are matching the cost increases that you're expected to see. So you get to the gray row there, which is cash flow, 6.2 million, both in 23 and 27. Obviously, capital expenditures that are funded by reserves can vary by year. So, amounts can be more or less. So you can see in this year, you're forecasting about 8 million in capital expenditures and other items. And so this year, we're expecting that you're going to reduce cash by about 1.7 to kind of pay for the excess projects you have going on. By 27, in that particular year, we're only showing 3.5 million of capital expenditures. So you actually have about 2.7 million left over to add to reserves. So again, that's really the whole purpose of having reserves, is that some years you need to take a little bit out of that to pay for extra projects, and some years you're really able to put back in for future projects. And but really what we're trying to target is that 6.2 million of cash flow to make sure that that's adequate to meet your future needs. One other note there at the bottom, we have assumed the 4.5 million loan to the water utility to help fund their share of the AMI costs, and the annual repayments on that would be 325,000 starting next or 25. If that loan doesn't happen, or if that terms change, then obviously that would change the cash projections slightly. So that's again kind of a high level of the costs that were shown in the study. The next slide shows the historical and projected net income. Red bars are under current rates, blue bars under proposed rates. So you can see we always like to kind of show what would happen if you didn't do any changes to rates. And you can see there that by 2027, you would have a very small net income. Actually, 26, you'd have a loss before the transmission revenues came in. So again, this is just one thing that's pointing to the need for these increases over time. Under the blue bars, you can see under proposed rates, income would bounce back nicely to about 4.8 million in 27. Again, that includes the additional transmission revenues that you're expecting to start receiving in that year. This is probably even more important. We're tracking the debt service coverage. Again, the red bars are under current rates. So if you don't change rates, coverage would drop well below 2, all the way down to 1.19 in 26 before rebounding a little bit. With proposed rates in blue, you can see that you will be maintaining coverage just above 2, at least based on the forecast through 2027. So that again was one kind of metric we were tracking to kind of determine the possible increases that were needed to make sure you were meeting this target going forward. Shifting gears to cash reserves, so that there again, the red line is current rates. Going back to 2010 through 2015, you were in that $8 to $13 million range. You had some nice growth in cash beyond that, including in the 2020-21 timeframe when you received actually $3 million of refunds from MRES for power supply and transmission costs. So that helped with increasing reserves along with some project that may have been delayed with COVID and some other factors. So you reach kind of a peak of about 35, 36 million here the last couple of years. Certainly with the projects you're planning, cash would drop off pretty rapidly back down to about 15.5 million without any rate changes. With the rate changes, we're expecting to kind of stabilize and then start to increase back to 27 million by 2027. So again, we're trying to stabilize reserves and hopefully get them back moving in the right direction in future years. As far as days cash on hand, another item that you track, and again, certainly trying to maintain above the minimum of 200 days. You can see you achieved that level in 2018 and been above that since then. Under current rates, you would drop below it, but under proposed, again, you would be just above that 200 level over the next 4 years. Another item we track, and so kind of going back to those 89 area utilities, and we track how much cash they have as a percentage of operating revenues. The median level there is 70%, and so that's the yellow line there that you see. You have been above that median the last few years, and then you're kind of dropping below that now. So even though you're maintaining above 200 days, you're actually still a little bit lower than the median, but I think all in all, you're in really good shape. And we kind of see this ebb and flow with various utilities where they're above the median for a while, and then they have some projects that kind of pull them down. But certainly the projected level is right around 50% of revenues. Historically, that's still a real solid financial position. And I think, again, other utilities have seen that grow over time as well. So I still think looking good here with this comparison as well. So then shifting gears a little bit to the cost of service study and kind of breaking down your costs in a different way. And this is more of a functional breakdown in terms of the source and the need for the cost. So you can see the demand related costs are just under 50%. And I've kind of listed what those include. So that's all the generation stations that you pay for through MRES and WAPA, high voltage transmission lines, substation. It's basically any costs that are required so that on that hot summer day or that very cold winter day, you're able to supply all the power that's needed in those extreme events. That's really a good definition of what demand is that peak level that is needed by all your customers. So again, that's the most significant cost at 50% or just under 50%. Energy costs are about 27%. That's all the variable costs and fuel. Customer facilities, that's going down into your system, looking at the customer transformers that are sitting outside of homes and businesses, service lines and those types of things. That comes in at about 21%. And then the other small piece there is customer service. So that's your office staff, billing, metering, and so on. And that's coming in at about 4%. The purpose of this slide is just to kind of break down. You've got three major rate classes: residential, small, general service, and general service. And then you've got three cost types. And really the point of this is that all customers are really paying the share of all costs. But those few customers in the general service class do pay a demand rate. So it's a separate rate, really a three-part rate that they pay. So because the demand costs are split out, then they pay a lower energy rate to compensate for that. So again, historically, we haven't charged residential, and most small general service customers are not charged for demand. Historically, we've charged the larger customers for demand. With the new metering that you're installing and some changes in the industry, that might evolve over time where we'd actually start looking at charging residential and small commercial for demand. But at least for now, this is how it's kind of set up. So again, all customers pay a share of demand costs. It's just how they pay it, whether it's embedded in the energy rate or broken out in a separate demand charge. So looking at all the cost allocations in a very highly summarized manner, this is really what we came up with in terms of the cost per kilowatt hour of serving each customer class and the revenues that you're currently receiving from each class, to kind of compare the two and say what changes might be necessary to kind of reach cost of service. And again, because this is our sixth study for Moorhead, things are pretty well in line. There were some bigger adjustments that have been necessary in prior studies. Staff has done a good job in past commissions of kind of making those changes to make sure that rates by and large reflect the cost of service, at least how we're estimating them in the study. So you can see that all the percentages are right around 11%, With the exception of streetlights, with the introduction of LED lights, we typically see that the cost per kilowatt hour goes up. So you can see that the costs we're showing are actually at 40.5 cents. That might look high, but based on other studies that we've done and others that we're aware of, it's very typical to see that street lighting costs anywhere from 35 to 45 cents per kilowatt hour. So again, you've got a lot of fixed costs of providing those lights spread over less kilowatt hours of usage. And so that's kind of how that rate is derived. So that does show an increase in their costs that the city pays for street lighting. These are the proposed percentage changes. Again, not any major shifts between classes. Overall, we're looking at 2.5% increases. Small general service would get slightly more than that. The other customers would get right around that 2.5 or just below that. So again, no major shifts here. Street and signal lighting would get a little bit higher increases based on the cost study. So they're looking at, anywhere from 7 to 8%. But otherwise, kind of status quo. We're kind of in this interim period. I think once time of use rates take full effect, and once we get this new metering data, we're going to, seeing probably some new changes going forward. But for right now, anyway, we're seeing kind of keeping the same rate designs and the same kind of overall rate philosophies that we've built on in past studies. One side topic here real quick, looking at residential solar. As you're aware, you've gotten some new solar there in your community. And so we kind of look at what is the impact to the utility of adding this solar. You can see that we are estimating that if a 5 kilowatt solar panel is added, that customer could avoid somewhere around $610 per year in electric costs. And of course, Moorhead would avoid some power costs coming out to about $335 per year. So you would see an estimated loss of about $275 per year per customer that installs solar. And this is kind of a common phenomenon that a lot of utilities are going to see as this happens, because obviously, again, the customer is not purchasing as much from you, but you still got fixed costs of serving them. So not a big impact to just a few have it. Obviously, if we see a big influx of customers with solar in the future, it could have at some point a rate impact on everyone else. And so it's something we're keeping an eye on. Certainly customers have a right to do this and to self-supply if they want to. Our focus is really just making sure that they are paying the proper fixed costs. So on days when the sun is not shining, obviously Moorhead Public Service stands ready to supply all of their power needs. And so there just needs to be a recognition that they are paying their share of the cost so that you're ready to serve them when they need the power. We're doing that through higher customer charges. That's really the first line of defense, if you will, to kind of make sure that they're paying a proper amount for that. And then possibly down the road looking at demand charges, but that might be, again, a future step if you suddenly saw huge impacts from this. And again, I don't expect that. Just kind of want to build awareness on this as kind of one of those emerging topics in the industry in terms of what is changing going forward. So then looking at the proposed rates, you can see we've put together a 4-year rate plan, recognizing that you will be looking at rates every year in your budget process, just as you've done in the past. So certainly some of these rates 2 or 3 years out could change a little bit. Our prime focus is really the 2024 rates, but certainly want to kind of show you a roadmap of where you might be heading over the next 4 years. So again, for residential, we're looking at a $1.20 increase in the customer charge next year, along with some small changes in the energy rate. Based on the cost study, we are increasing the summer rate by a little bit more than the winter rate, again, just to reflect the purchase power costs that you are incurring to serve customers in those seasons. So those would be the residential rates. As far as your dual fuel program, that's kind of an off-peak rate. So again, those customers are interrupted at times of system peaks. So they get a lower energy rate in compensation for that. That would go up by 1/10 cent per year. And then the interruptible and load control rates, no changes there except for the air conditioner control. Discussing this with staff a little bit. Currently, you're providing a 9% credit in the months of June through August. We're actually proposing to extend that credit from May through September. This would allow you to control. You do have some, pretty hot days in late May, early September, where you probably could see some power cost savings if you were able to control in those months. So we're just basically extending the credit out to 5 months and decreasing it to $550. So really, over the course of a year, the customer would get an extra 50 cents over those months. And again, that would allow you then to really look at some of those hot days in those months and try to save some costs if you can. So that's kind of just a minor tweak to that rate, but otherwise we're suggesting the same rates for the curtailable and the custom generation. After looking at some analysis of that, we felt like those were still appropriate levels to compensate those customers that are in those programs. As far as monthly impacts on residential, you can see pretty modest impacts of anywhere from right around $2, $1.50 to $2.50, depending upon usage. And again, the percentage impacts are pretty well distributed, with lower volume customers getting slightly higher percentage increases than higher volume customers. But again, overall, no major shifts here. And again, part of the focus of each study is not just to increase every component of the rate by the same percentage, but really to rebalance rates between the various components and make sure that you're charging accurately for your power usage. So that's really what we're trying to do here with these rates. So this is the first of 4 rate comparisons. So the top shows the monthly bill for a typical residential usage level of 800 kilowatt hours. The bottom then shows the percentage difference between Moorhead and the other utilities. So the yellow utilities are obviously other municipal utilities served by MRES. The 4 green bars are investor-owned utilities that you also compare with in some of your comparisons. And then, of course, we've got the 2 co-ops there, Cass County and Red River. So you can see here for the residential customer, you are the 4th lowest, and you would remain that way. The median at the bottom is about 13% higher than Moorhead. Still a very comfortable margin between you and the median, and I expect that would continue. Certainly other members and other utilities are considering rate increases next year. These are all 2023 rates for everyone but the proposed for Moorhead. So again, we do expect many of these bills to go up if we did this graph again next year. So everything's going to continue to shift to the right as utilities see higher costs. And I would expect that Moorhead Public Service would continue to be very competitive in the upcoming years. On the small general service side, you can see $2 increases in the customer charge each month. Also some small increases in the energy charges. Same with residential. The gap between summer and winter would grow a little bit based on the cost study. You do have an excess demand charge for those few customers that have demand over 25 kilowatts. So that kind of transitions between the small general service and the full general service class. So that would go up slightly. And then you do have a multiple meter charge that applies to dual fuel meters and some other commercial customers with multiple meters. And we're not suggesting any change in those charges at the bottom. As far as rate comparison on the small general service side, 1,200 kilowatt hours per month, you can see you're actually the 3rd lowest. You would go up by about 3%. The median is 11% higher than Moorhead. So again, comfortably competitive here. And we would expect you to remain in about the same position on the graph next year as well. I'll pause just real quick for any other questions before we wrap up the other slides.
No questions here.
Okay. On the general service side, we alluded to this earlier. You can see there's a 3-part rate. So the energy charge for these customers is lower. And then you've got the demand rates there by season. So these are kind of the rate structures that you've had now for several years. So we're really just continuing forward with those structures. The customer charge would go up by $5 per month. And then the energy rates and demand rates would go up accordingly. The primary customers, that's a group of about 7 of kind of your largest customers that have metering on the high side, voltage side of the transformer, and have transformer ownership. So that's the only difference between secondary and primary, and the primary customers basically get a 2% discount for that primary metering. So that's the only difference in those rates. As far as the comparisons, this first comparison would be kind of a typical larger restaurant in town, or kind of a mid-sized customer, if you will. And again, 4th lowest in the graph there in the red bar, you would go up about 2%. The median is 23% higher than Moorhead. Some of these other utilities have a little different rate design, so you're actually even more competitive on this chart than on a couple of the others. But either way, positionally, you're about same spot on the graph. And again, we'll continue to be, I think, very competitive going forward. And the final graph is a larger customer in town would be a larger industrial type customer. Again, once again, fourth lowest on the chart, going up a couple thousand here. The median is actually 29% higher. So as with all the other graphs, I think you can really tout your competitive rates that you have compared with all the utilities here that we're including in the comparison. Kind of the final topic here is the street lighting costs. Wanted to break down those costs again based on a number of different cost allocations that we do, and we reviewed all this with staff. So in 2027, we're kind of looking forward 4 years to what that rate should be. You can see purchase power at 107,000, distribution at 130, and the rest of the breakdown there to a total of 823,000 in 2027. And on a cost per kilowatt hour basis, we're looking at, again, 40.5 cents per kilowatt hour for this service. So again, street lighting is unique in that you're not only supplying the power and you're not only having them pay for a share of the system cost, just like any other customer, but then you're also providing and maintaining lights. So there's a cost to that. And obviously there's an agreed upon amount of 75,000 for capital expenditures. So that's replacing lights and adding new lights as necessary. And so that's really quantifying the breakdown. And this has been developed over a number of years and different analysis that we've done. And I think we reviewed this with the city as well a couple of years ago. So nothing new here, just kind of updated costs based on the methodology that we've established. So then looking at the street lighting, you've broken that out into a two-part rate. So you've got the energy charge per kilowatt hour, and that's going to be roughly equivalent to what residential and general service customers pay. So that's kind of a recognizable amount of right around 11 cents per kilowatt hour. And then you've got the monthly charge per light. And that has been broken out between 3 lighting types based on cost data supplied by MPS. So you've got the standard LED, which is currently at 706. And then those charges kind of step up from there. So we're increasing all of those charges based on the cost study up to the level that's indicated by the study in 2027. So again, we're stepping those up over 4 years to meet the expected costs that we're seeing in 2027. So that's really the basis for these rate changes. The bottom should actually say security lighting, but that's the customer security lighting that you charge out the different wattages and bulb types and so on. So again, we've proposed some small increases to those charges as well, but no major changes other than to eliminate the 400 watt mercury vapor since there are no longer customers using that type of light. So again, to summarize, again, I want to thank staff for all the input and information they have provided. It's very helpful. We are proposing 2.5% increases over the next 4 years. The impacts will vary slightly, but overall, again, most customers will see right around that 2.5% change. As always, please call on us if there's changes, if you see cost changes or different things that are going on. We can always assist with that as necessary. And we recognize over 4 years, again, this is just a plan, a blueprint, but things can change. You know, we feel pretty certain that you will need some increases over the next 4 years, and hopefully we'll be able to maintain this type of plan. We feel that the rates will reflect purchase power costs, as we've demonstrated, very competitive rates for all your customers. And I think, again, your financial position has probably never been stronger on the electric side, and I think it's going to remain that way going forward. So that's really the good news here is all the metrics with the days cash and the debt service coverage is all going to look continue to look solid going forward. So again, with that, I appreciate the opportunity to work with you and your staff. And certainly if you have any questions now or in the future, don't hesitate to ask, and we'll try to help.
Anybody have any questions? None. We'll go on to accept the report. Thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you for hanging by us with this technical difficulty.
No problem. I will sign off unless there's anything else, and I'll let you continue the meeting.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to accept the electric rate study by MRES.
So moved.
Motion by Paulson, oops. Seconded by Durand to accept the 2023 electric rate study by Missouri River Energy Services. Discussion? Seeing none, Durand? Paulson?
Yes.
Gilbertson?
Aye.
Thompson, yes. Item number 10. They approve Moorhead's continuation of 100% net zero carbon power supply through MRES's Bright Energy Choices program for 2024.
Sure, I'll start this off, and if we have some questions, we can talk with, or can bring Taylor up to the podium as well, too. Again, back in 2020 or 2021, MPS Commission approved this. Again, we do this through Missouri River Energy Services and their Bright Energy Choices. This basically takes whatever percentage of of carbon-based power supply in our portfolio and allows us to purchase renewable energy certificates. For 2024, the projected percentage is going to be 82%, so we'd have to cover 18% of our power supply. That roughly has a cost of about $66,000 annually, and that covers the entire city of Moorhead, or all Moorhead Public Service customers. This is a good opportunity to continue with this. We aren't seeing RECs going up yet. We could see that in the future, but right now those are holding steady. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
How long have we been doing this?
In 2020 is when the first time we approved it, and that was for 2021. So this will be our 4th year that would be doing it for next year. 21, 22, 23, and 24.
Questions? I entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion by Durand, seconded by Paulson to approve Moorhead's continuation of 100% net zero carbon power supply. Discussion? Seeing none. Durand? Paulson?
Yes.
Gilbertson?
Yes.
Thompson, yes. All right. Item number 11, reports. City Council, Mr. Gilbertson.
Thanks, Chairperson Thompson. On the appeal, we did approve the Onyx Bar and Grill liquor license. They have not opened to date. I'm not sure what's going on the state level. At the last meeting, we also approved for the Immigrant Development Center, presented a proposal to construct and operate a cultural mall in the city of Moorhead in the old Wells Fargo building. So look, it's a $15 million project, looking at taking up to 30,000 square feet space. And they requested a $7.25 million grant from the state.
Thank you. Public Service Commission? Just want to point out that the budget work group met, and you'll see the presentation at the rate hearing will reflect our discussion. Additionally, on October 3rd, there was a bus tour with Moorhead Business Association and City Council looking at facilities of both water and electric. So I want to thank the MPS employees that went along and helped explain the role of water and electric to people that were on the bus. Item number C, General Manager's Report, Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me, but I'm going to have Mark Pritchard come up with most of the items on there for the Water Division. If I remember right, we had the Rural Water Festival and then an update on the lime byproduct use as well. So I'm going to let Mark speak to that.
All right, thank you, Travis. Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Manager.
Mark, you'll want to speak up.
Is the microphone?
The audio is not working.
Okay. Yeah, Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Manager. The first item that Travis had mentioned was the 2023 Red River Water Festival that is held annually at the Umcum Center here. It takes about 7 days to go through the entire process of having most of the area fourth graders come to the facility and go through a variety of stations where they learn about the watershed and a lot of the background information on the area and how the Red River affects our community. So as part of that, for many years, MPS has volunteered its time and personnel to lead what's called the Water Treatment Officer Station, where we take a variety of students from various classes and we teach them how a filter at the water plant works. So there's a couple staff from the water treatment plant from our operations crew and myself, as well as staff from the City of Fargo water plant that all helped coordinate the filtration booth that we had. So I think all in all, there was something like 15 or 16 different schools. I don't have the exact numbers, but it was by far the largest activity that they've had for the year. And they actually ended up adding Wednesday morning. So it's gone from what started off as a 2 or 3 day event up to a 7-day event. So it's getting a lot of support from the community, and we're happy to be a part of it. And then for the second item that we have that Travis had mentioned, for the commercial use of dewatered lime, everyone's favorite topic here. So in 2021, when the dewatering facility first began producing dewatered cake, as we call it, at the facility, we've been aggressively investigating different commercial uses for this byproduct material above and beyond what we're doing now, which is land applying for pH adjustment. So as one of the main pieces to that commercial use at a local level, MPS staff have been working very closely with the Minnesota Department of Transportation in their research department to see if we can introduce our dewatered lime as a substitute material in the roadway construction process. So that has been about a 2-year conversation up till this point in time, and I am very happy to present that we have been selected by the research committee for the Minnesota Department of Transportation for Minnesota and Wisconsin to have our dewatered lime material used in a study called the Novel Durability Screening Method for Stabilized Geomaterials. So that's a little bit of a mouthful. What they're particularly interested in checking is how does our dewatered lime mix with area soil specific to the Red River Valley, and how does it perform during various freeze-thaw cycles, because that's something they don't have as much information on. And we're very hopeful that at the end of this, we will have a roadmap on commercial use within the Red River Valley. So that would greatly cut down on our trucking costs, and we'd be able to reallocate those funds to other very much needed projects. So in addition to the research that is currently underway, we are also working with area entrepreneurs to see if we can use our material as a substitute for building insulation of all things. There is a couple different startups. One's in Bismarck, and we just recently were contacted from a community or a business in the community in the Idaho region, talking about using the Hurd product. It's spelled H-U-R-D. It's the woody stalk of the hemp plant. It's a very fibrous, woody material that can be essentially ground up and mixed with lime and a binding agent, and it is pretty much a 100% fireproof replacement for fiberglass insulation. So not exactly what we were expecting to be looking into, but nonetheless, it seems like it has some legs to it. So we have a couple different avenues that we're pursuing on that front. And there was a tiny house built in the Fargo-Moorhead Metro, I think 2 summers ago. And so far that is showing that it has performance capabilities to either meet or exceed what existing fiberglass insulation can do. So that's so far so good on that front. So
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Great job.
Any questions for Mark? Thank you, Mark.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Sledge. Does that conclude your report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Let's take a motion to approve the general manager's report.
Second.
Motion by Duran, seconded by Paulson to approve the general manager's report. Discussion? Seeing none. Paulson?
Aye.
Gilbertson?
Aye.
Duran? Thompson? Yes. To pause here. I have 2 minutes. Okay. Report on the electric service extension surcharge. Do we have time for that?
Yeah, I think if we go through it quickly, we'll be fine. I'll hit this one. So on an annual basis, and we're trying to line these out because Mark was supposed to have our budget report done before we did the rate hearing. Overall, on an annual basis, as we annex new territory into Moorhead, we have to purchase those service territories from other utilities, Xcel Energy and Red River Valley Co-op. On an annual basis, we adjust that surcharge. And at the end of the day, it's whatever our rate is and whatever the former utility rate was, we split the difference on that. And this basically reflects that. We've provided you with a revised update. We found an error in some of our calculations, so that was provided to you tonight as well too. But overall, any changes on this are not significant to the overall budget. We'll have our updated numbers for the final rate approval in December.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Second, anybody?
Second.
Okay, motion by Duran, seconded by Paulson to accept the report on electric service extension surcharges. No discussion, moving on. Paulson?
Aye.
Gilbertson?
Aye.
Duran? Thompson, yes. Report on number 1 proposed 2024 budget.
I think with
We
the
wanna wait?
time, let's go ahead and do the rate hearing, and then we
Okay.
can do the budget
Will do.
proposal. Mark's excited to talk.
Okay. It's 5:30, so it's time to move on to the public hearing. As stated in Article 5, Section 7, Rules Governing the Conduct of Rate Hearings of Moorhead Public Service Commission bylaws adopted November 14th, 2017, no rate change shall be adopted by the commission unless the commission first holds a public hearing affording all affected parties a chance to participate. A notice of said hearing shall be published in the official newspaper of the city at least 10 days prior to the date set for the hearing. The notice shall indicate the purpose for, the time, date, and place of the hearing. The hearing shall be conducted by the chairperson or a commissioner selected by the commission. At the hearing, the commission and its staff shall present the facts establishing the need for and the reasonableness of the proposed rate change. Sufficient time shall be allowed to enable all interested parties to be heard, but the commission shall determine when all relevant testimony has been presented or when testimony has become repetitious. Testimony will be considered only after a speaker has been recognized and the person has identified himself or herself. For 30 days subsequent to the closing of the hearing and prior to the adoption of a rate change, written testimony shall be received and considered by the commission. The commission may grant extensions prior to the adoption of the rate change if it finds that additional testimony is necessary or productive. After all relevant testimony has been submitted, the commission shall adopt rates which it determines to be necessary and reasonable, including the effective date and cause the same to be published in the official newspaper of the city. I entertain a motion to open the the electric rate hearing.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion by Gilbertson and a second by Durand to open the electric rate hearing. Paulson?
Aye.
Durand?
Aye.
Gilbertson?
Aye.
Thompson, yes. We're going with the presentation first.
Next line up, Cheryl. There you go. All right, I'll do the quick presentation here. Again, for a lot of this you've heard from Tim Miller earlier. A lot of what we have in our 2024 electric rate hearing is based off of what we've gotten from Missouri River that was proposed earlier this evening. Again, overall, how our electric rates determined. Again, ours are cost of service based. As the commission just accepted the report, we have our 2020 electric rate study, and again, looking at doing our next rate study, 27, 28 time period. Again, Tim provided 4 years. Typically, we do them on a 5-year number, and we'll work with MRES staff and find a good time to put that next rate study in. Again, long range 10-year plan review. Again, this looks at all of our major projects and infrastructure our purchase power costs, our transmission cost forecast that Tim provided earlier. We are currently getting close to the end of a transfer agreement. We do have a draft agreement in the hands of the City of Moorhead currently, or City of Moorhead staff, I should say, and they are reviewing that proposed transfer agreement as well. That agreement ends at the end of this year. Again, we'll also look at our operating expenditures, our capital improvement plans, and then reserve requirements as well, as Tim alluded to earlier. Again, we do an annual in-depth review that takes about 4 months. We start typically in August, September timeframe, and then we finish up at the end of the year with approval of the final rates for 2024. We met with our budget working group earlier in October, provided them with a preliminary report. We're having our public hearing tonight, and then, of course, final approval will be December 19th. Again, overall, as Tim talked about, we're looking at roughly 2 to 2.5% rate increases over the next few years. Overall, that rate increase is 2.5% for 2024. You can see 26 is a 2.5. Really, what we're doing there is we're planning for some type of rate increase from WAPA in 2025, and we're trying to levelize those over the 24 and the 25 time period. Hopefully, we won't have to go into 26, but again, trying to not have one year higher than the other, just trying to levelize it. Again, a cost of service rate restructure, again, Tim talked about that. There was no significant changes overall to the rate classes. Biggest impact was the streetlight utility side of things. And we just talked about the fee or the surcharge that we charge to new customers that were recently annexed. That is typically a 10-year agreement with those utilities where we pay lost revenues for 10 years. Kind of went over that, so we'll skip that. Overall, what's in your packet right now, those are incorrect numbers because we had some revised numbers, so we'll be providing updated numbers as we get closer to the final budget approval. Again, we have our normal renewable energy programs. We've got Capture the Energy, Capture the Sun, Capture the Earth, and then our old program, which was Capture the Wind. We've sunset that, but it's still have those wind turbines in place. Again, overall, 2.5% increase. If you look at how that looks on the residential side of things, we're looking at doing about a 7.8% increase on the customer charge. That's going up $1.20. And then the energy charges are adjusting slightly, about 2% and a little more than 1% based on different times of the year. Overall, dual fuel, we're seeing just a slight uptick in that as well to about 2.33%, and then the meter charges stay the same. If you look at that, again, the overall rate increase is a 2.5%. That overall impact with customer charge and electricity consumption has a total of $2.26 on a monthly basis is the impact to the customer. That is an average customer using about 850 kilowatts a month. Again, 2024 proposed rates. This is more looking at your general service and small general service, as Tim had talked about earlier. Again, customer charges are taking a higher percentage increase, but then again, that covers our operating costs, our facilities needs, and things like that. Energy charges are going up slightly, same with demand charges as well too, but have less of an impact. So overall, if you look at the total impact, it's still 2.5% to the budget. So where does your payment go? If you look at a customer that has an 850 kilowatt per month usage, purchase power is about 45% of that. And again, this is looking at it based on $97.35. So 45% of that goes to purchase power, 20.5% goes to transfer, capital expenditures not financed. So this is construction we finance with rates and reserves. That's about 11%. Salaries, wages, and benefits is about 11.15%. Other operating expenses is just under 6%. Principal interest payments, that is about 5.38%, and then increasing bond reserves is 0.5%. Overall, that's where your money goes on a monthly basis. Again, looking at the rate comparison side of things, looking at rates currently and then as projected for 2024 with the rate increase, you'll notice that we are still the lowest in the region. These are going to adjust just a little bit because of the changes we made to some of those surcharges and calculation errors that we had noted earlier. Historically, 2017, we had a 4.5% increase, and then for the next 5 years, we are at 0%. In 2023, we did a 2%. And again, as we looked forward here, 24, 25, and 26 are 2.5% rate increases overall, then starting downward at about 2% in 2027. Again, overall, how does this impact? And we'll go over the water stuff in just a minute once we close this rate hearing. You're seeing about $2.26 net impact on the electric side, $1.86 for a total of $4.12. Overall net impact to a customer is 2.94%, looking at both water and electric utility adjustments as well. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
Question? Hi, could you just state your name and address, please?
Yep, I'm Brian Charleston. I actually own East 10 Laundry over in Moorhead. So I guess I have several questions. Hopefully this is the form to ask them, but why do we have so many different rates for different things, whether it's residential, apartment, commercial, industrial? And why do we have different rates from May to October, and then it's different from November to April? I work for Cass County Maintenance, Buildings and Grounds for the county. In Fargo, I looked at our water bills. One flat rate. Doesn't matter where you live, what you do. Are we trying to attract businesses in Moorhead? Because if we are, that's one thing we should take into account. The other thing is, what I appreciate about Fargo is the more water you use, the less you pay. So from 0 to 200,000 gallons is $4.95. From 200,000 to 500,000 is $4.65. So they actually are giving almost like a better rate for the more you use. Where here it's almost like we're doing the opposite. Those who use more water, we're charging them.
We'll talk more about that at the water rate hearing.
Okay, is this just electric then?
Just electric
I'm
right
sorry.
now.
Yep.
Okay,
That's okay.
which I do appreciate the electric rates. So
Do you have any questions on the electric rates?
electric, no.
Okay.
Water, yes.
Okay.
So
See you in a
save
few
those
minutes.
questions, your answers for later, I guess.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Nope, you're fine.
Not a problem.
We like to lead with a positive.
Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I'll request a motion to close the hearing.
Second?
A motion by Duran, seconded by Paulson to close the electric rate hearing. Gilbertson?
Aye.
Paulson?
Aye.
Duran? Thompson? Yes. Okay, now I'd entertain a motion to open the water rate hearing.
Second?
A motion by Duran, seconded by Gilbertson to open the water rate hearing. Gilbertson?
Aye.
Paulson?
Aye.
Thompson? Aye. Duran? Okay, great. Mr. Schmidt?
Yep, well, I'll give Cheryl just a second here to pull the water rate hearing PowerPoint up. Again, this is 2024 water rate hearing. Again, a lot of these things are very similar. We'd use a very similar process overall for both water and electric. We are delayed, of course, on the electric side because we were waiting for some external numbers. Those have come from WAPA and Missouri River Energy Services. In 2022, we completed a water rate study. That water rate study was good for 23 through 26. Planning to do our next rate study in 2027. Again, this is based on a 5 to 7, so that can slide a little bit based on how everything is looking and projecting, and if we got to make some changes sooner rather than later. Again, we consider long-range planning. Again, staff puts together a comprehensive plan. We look out 10 years, but really looking at the near-term 2 to 3 year time frame of what's needed for capital improvements, as those are going to have larger impacts on the rates than future years. And we look at our operating expenses, including chemical pricing, and that's been a sticky point over the last few years as those chemical costs have gone up. Capital improvement plans, again, looking at just completing a bunch of the Lime dewatering facility and repainting and the construction of a new water tower. So we've kind of ended a bunch of major projects, but we do have some other needs that are going to be coming up just from a life expectancy standpoint on the capital improvement side, and then of course reserve requirements and payment on bonds as well. Again, annual in-depth process, 4 months, very similar process. We start with staff internally, looking at their projects and if there's any changes in needs, trying to get some preliminary estimates on project costs and trying to line out what we're going to be doing for the next year as well. Again, we met with the budget work group at the same time that we did electric earlier in October. Tonight we're having our public hearing, and then we'll have final approval on December 23rd as well too. Again, what are the rate increases financing? And as you can see, this is a little different than the electric rate study. Again, capital improvements are a major piece of this, where purchase power is the larger piece on the electric side. So if we weren't having any rate increases on the power side, we probably wouldn't be doing a rate increase. But with on the water side, we do have capital improvements that are needed. And some of these projects can shift as well too. Some of them are drought resiliency needs, and that's the top one. That's that Buffalo well field. And we are working to try to find grant funding on that one to help with the overall cost of that to minimize the ratepayer impact. The $12.7 million for the South Buffalo well line, that is an existing transmission line that will have to be realigned or replaced. That's what, 1940s, 50s mark era pipeline? Yeah, Jake is shaking his head, yes. So it's been in the ground for a while. So again, that's our backup supply for when the red is not available. Got to make sure that those assets are available when needed as well. Again, we got distribution maintenance. Again, our water main asset management plan and replacing 1.25 miles of cast iron pipe on an annual basis, and other projects that come up as well. We got $4.5 million to install automated meter infrastructure, and then about $7.5 million for other water plant needs as well, coming up in the next roughly 5 years. Again, overall rate classes, again, a lot of this is based off of the size of the meter that feeds your property, from all the way from 5/8 of an inch all the way up to 8 inch. You can see those percentage increases on the customer charge. Again, this is based off our rate study from last year. Seen some of those going up 5.3% all the way down to about 4.5% of an increase. Again, overall, we're projecting to have a 4% overall increase to the total budget. So that just based on rate classes. We've got residential adjustments in the second. Again, Minnesota's got some different rules, and so we've got to follow the conservation rates that we have to have in place. And we've had those for several years. So yeah, overall customer average May to October. This is based off 100 cubic feet or 748 gallons. And those costs are adjusting slightly as well too. Again, looking between the customer charge and the overall usage or consumption charges, those are going to be an overall 4%, but the customer charge is higher, the overall consumption is lower for the rate classes for residential, apartment, commercial, and industrial as well. As you can see, the industrial is a little higher than the commercial or the apartment side and residential. So again, that's making adjustments to make sure that everybody's paying their fair share. I should note that we also have cubic feet and gallons in there. The reason for that is as we do this AMI project, we are going to be converting from cubic feet to gallons just because it's a more commonly known measurement in the area. So once that comes into play, so that's just basically a conversion from cubic feet to 1 gallon or 1,000 gallon rates as well. Again, proposed rate increase, again, 4% or an overall $1.86 per month. Average residential customer with a 3/4 inch meter, their customer charge will go up 85 cents. Their commodity charge will go up 96 cents, and the fire protection charge will go up a half or 5 cents to a total of $1.86. That's based off customer or residential house using 600 cubic feet a year or 4,500 gallons, excuse me. Again, fire hydrant facility charge, that'll go up slightly as well. Residential is going up about 2%, commercial 1.67%, apartments just under 2.6%, and industrial is going up 3.5%. Again, where does your money go for your utility bill when you spend about $47 for water? Again, chemical cost is about 12%, city transfer is about 5.6%, capital items not financed is about 16.6%, salary, wages, and benefits 28.2%, other operating expenses about 23%, bond reserves is a third of a percent roughly, and then principal and interest payments, those are 13.9%. How does MPS rates compare to other utilities? Again, we're looking at several utilities in the region or area, looking at what our current rate is to our 2024 rate. You can see that we are right in the middle of that. We've got a few utilities lower than us, and then pretty even with everybody on the higher end of us. So as long as we continue to work on that, I think we'll be okay. Again, looking at historical rate increases and what we're forecasting for the next few years. 2017, we were about 6.5%. 2018 and 19, we did 5.3% rate increases. 2020, we did a 6%. And then from there, we shifted backwards a little bit. In 21 and 22, we did 3.5%. Last year, after the rate study, we noticed that we needed to go back up to 4.5%. Based on chemical costs and sales, we were able to bring that back down. We were looking at a 4.5% this year. With those two things coming in a little less than what we were, or sales coming in higher and chemical costs coming in less, we're looking at a 4% rate increase. And then 25 through 27, we're still looking at 4.5% rate increases in those years. And again, those could adjust based on sales or costs coming in as well too. Again, overall, we talked about this in the electric rate hearing. We're going to see about a $4.12 net impact on a monthly basis to the average residential customer. And that has about a 2.9% overall impact on the water and electric charges in the MPS and City of Moorhead utility bill. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
Questions? Comments?
You want to speak to your questions again?
Once again, Brian Charlson with East 10 Laundry. When you go to your comparing other utility rates, you have your examples, but you don't tell where they are.
Correct. We try not to. We know who they are.
Okay.
It's Fargo, Grand Forks, East Grand Forks, and I think Cass Rural Water District is in there, and I think maybe Fergus Falls, and I don't remember who the other one is.
I just wonder if there's a reason why you left them out.
Typically, we try to not put their names on there. It's just keeping it somewhat private.
Sense, I
so
understand.
we know exactly who they are. But so what was your question?
So I'm just kind of wondering why there's so many different rates and why we have different time periods for rates.
Yep. So a lot of that is based off the conservation rates that we have to have in place. And so that's 150% of your winter average. And so that's why you see a different rate from October to April, if I'm correct, and then May to September, or through the end of September or the end of October, you have a different rate, because a lot of that is irrigation as well too. And so if you got lawn sprinklers going and things like that, that does impact your overall usage that comes through the meter. And so that's why we have different rates for different times of the year. And different rate classes is based on, what size, typically it's based on what size meter they have, but overall it's how much water that they're using. So an apartment, I don't know how to explain this one. Mark, do you know how to explain it? Either Mark. Mark, do you want to come up to go to the podium?
Yep.
I can step off.
Thank you, Travis. Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Manager. So part of the reason why the conservation rates are written as is with different steps is years ago, the Minnesota Department of Health put out a statute that determined that water utilities, public water utilities such as ourselves, need to have conservation rates in place, and they picked it was May through October and then November to April as the 2 time periods. So then they have the winter average and then the 100% or 150% of the winter average for the summer rates. It's a conservation rate that the Minnesota legislature determined to put into statute about 2008, 2010 range. And I don't know as much about the North Dakota side of things, but there is differences in the legislative philosophy of the 2 states. So that's a primary reason for the difference and why we have varying tiers and then varying classes based off of usage. So.
So are you basing, when you talk about residential, apartment, commercial, and industrial, the amount of use basically is what you're kind of factoring in on the price? So on average, what are you seeing for like apartments for usage?
I think it really depends on the number of units or the size of the meter, and they've got to be sized correctly for the facility or the building. I guess I can't specifically answer the average on those because it really varies. I mean, you got 60 plexes down to 4 plexes, so it's hard to state that.
So I guess my question is like an average size apartment, are you saying they use more than commercial or less than commercial?
Yeah.
Right.
Operation
It
that
depends on.
doesn't rely on water, they may not use, they may not use as much as an apartment, but if it's a commercial business like yourself that uses a lot of water, as you know, laundry, it's a hard comparison to make.
Right. I mean, I use a lot of water. And I've done a lot of things. I've put in a lot of machines that conserve water. So it's not like I'm going out and buying the heavy use. I'm trying to do the best I can, but my water bill is extremely expensive compared to if I went to Fargo. It'd be about $600 to $700 less per month. And to me, that's huge.
Do we have any programs for water users, businesses that are big water users, or commercials?
Typically, it's more economic development incentives. Don't think, I mean, if typically we have energy efficiencies as well too, but not on the water rate or the water usage side of things. It'd be good to sit down and look at your comparisons and try to put some pencil to paper and figure out what the differences are. Have a bigger conversation on that.
I'd appreciate that. That'd be great. Another question I have is when you talk about like the fire hydrant, is that based on the meter or based on the property?
Mark?
Yeah, so the hydrant charge, the fire hydrant facility charge, is that based on the meter or the property?
Mark Moylan, Finance Division Manager. But when the fire hydrant facility charge was put into place years ago, they really just looked at the existing classes of customers that we have. And at this time, we currently have 4 primary, the residential, the apartments, large users, and industrial. And they tried to find what would be a fair price based on the size of the meters and the lines serving each of the various entities, and then allocating the costs required to maintain adequate fire pressure or water pressure to be able to fight fires throughout the city. And so they broke those down, divided by the number of accounts, that were within each of those classes and determine the rates that way. So at this point, they're considered based on the cost of service study to be fair based on each of the different customer class types. Now, as with almost everything that we deal with, as Travis indicated on apartments, a 4-plex, 6-plex, 30-plex are currently paying the same thing. We don't have a way to go out and say, what type of unit each unit or residence is, or each house, but we just kind of lump them together as the apartment to say, on average, this is an average cost. It's something that could be looked at a later use, but at this time, we don't have a way to differentiate, just as we don't know how many units or how many people are living in each apartment to, allocate garbage and sanitation and things like that. It's just a general average to get something out there so that it's fair and equitable considered to all. I hope that helps. Not perfect.
The reason I asked that question is for the commercial complex that I was in, the strip mall that I was in, there was 1 meter. And I had a sub-meter that I had to read every month, give that reading to the landlord. We had to do the math and figure out what part of the bill was mine. It was a major headache. So finally, thank God, you guys actually helped me put a meter in after fighting you guys for like 5 years to finally get one. You finally got me one. But now, the only thing that has changed in that property is now I have my own meter. So now I get direct billed from you guys rather than having to pay my landlord. And now I'm getting those extra surcharges that I didn't pay before, just because I have a meter. That's the only difference. That's why I asked that question, if it's based on the meter or the property.
For your questions.
Yep,
and
those are great
comments.
questions.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. I'd entertain a motion to close the water rate hearing.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Duran, seconded by Paulson to close the water rate hearing. Further discussion? Seeing none. Duran?
Yes.
Paulson?
Yes.
Gilbertson?
Aye.
Thompson, yes. Okay. Written comments will be received for 30 days from the date of this hearing, and no action will be taken on the rates until 30 days from the date of this hearing. For comments to be considered by the commission, written comments should be emailed to mps@mpsutility.com or be postmarked no later than Friday, November 17th, 2023, and mailed to the Moorhead Public Service Commission, P.O. Box 779, Moorhead, Minnesota 56561-0779. The person providing the comments must provide his or her name and address along with the comment. A formal decision regarding MPS's 2024 rate structure will be determined at the Commission's meeting on or about December 19th, 2023. Additional information on our proposed budget and rates is available at www.mpsutility.com. Thank you. Move back to where we were. If I can remember correctly, that was item 11E, accept report number 1 on the proposed 2024 budget.
All right, I'll have Mark come reiterate what we just mostly talked about, but I'll let Mark speak to this. Mark and staff has done an excellent job this year looking at the numbers, trying to figure out what's going to work within the budget, if we got to make some tweaks up or down. And so with that, I'll let Mark kind of present his overall report number 1.
Thank you, Travis. Mark Moylan, and Finance Division Manager. Really was hoping to prevent this before the rate hearing, so it's kind of like watching a movie out of order. You saw the grand finale, and now you kind of hear how we got to this point of the grand finale. But anyway, at this point, we'd like to present to you report number 1 on the proposed budget. To date, MPS has been gathering all the key inputs and stuff to put together the budgets to consider from the electric side, the transmission costs, purchase power costs, transfer payments to the city, operations, and long-term capital improvement plans. On the water side, we've been looking at water chemicals, and other waste disposal costs, which have grown immensely in the last 4 or 5 years as a result of the sludge processing. The budget also is taking into consideration the 3 items that you heard today, the surcharge of the rate study from Tim Miller and the net zero carbon MRES program, the Bright Energy Choices. So the budget, those items are already included in here under the assumption that they would be approved tonight because they are, again, not material to the rates that we're presenting or proposing. As part of this process, as indicated earlier, the budget working group did get together and heard our presentation as well as the preliminary findings from the rate study. And the consensus was they were comfortable with presenting a 2.5% electric rate increase and a 4% water rate increase, which again was presented in the rate hearings. We were originally looking at between 0 to 4% for electric. We came in at 2.5, and we were looking at 0 to 5% for water, and by coming in at 4, we came again within the preliminary ranges. So at this time, we're just looking to present you budget number 1. It will be another presentation in December before the final rate. So if there are any tweaks, any comments, we'll be looking at that to see if we need to make any changes to the final numbers. We'll incorporate the surcharge changes that were brought up today due to the math error. So we'll make sure that that schedule is correctly presented in the budget binder and look forward to approving the final rates in December. So at this time, I'd open to any questions that anyone might have.
Questions for Mark? You're right, it is sort of anticlimactic, isn't it?
Timing. All timing.
It's all the timing. Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, I entertain a motion to accept the report number 1 on the proposed budget.
Second.
A motion by Duran, seconded by Paulson, to accept report number 1 on the proposed 2024 budget. Discussion? Seeing none. Gilbertson?
Aye.
Paulson?
Aye.
Thompson? Aye. Duran? Great, thank you. That concludes item number 11. Moving on to item number 13, award bid for 2023-24 tree trimming. Mr. Schmidt.
Yep, so I'll have Taylor come up, briefly speak to this. Overall, we'll have if you approve this, we'll have a new tree trimmer for the first time in a long time. We have 2 bids this year, and Clear Cut Trees out of Detroit Lakes is the apparent low bidder. Taylor, I'll let you go ahead and speak to the rest of it.
Evening, Taylor Holt, project engineer. Currently looking to award bids to, as Travis said, Clear Cut Tree Trimming. They're a fairly new outfit, so we've been going through the process of vetting them. This agenda item award is contingent on making sure that they provide us with the proper qualifications and certifications in order to do the tree trimming around our line work. This tree trimming is important for the reliability of mostly residential customers throughout the older parts of town where we haven't been able to come up with the funds to put it underground quite yet. They focus on the main distribution lines first, but they will help to trim up some of the secondary wires that more commonly serve just one household. The numbers came in under budget, but it's still considerably more than what we were seeing for pricing just a couple years ago. But having a second competitive bid, I think, will be very important in the future, trying to keep those prices suppressed. Are there any questions from the commission at this time?
None?
Move approval?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Duran, seconded by Paulson, to award the bid for 2023-24 tree trimming. Discussion? Seeing none. Gilbertson?
Aye.
Paulson?
Aye.
Duran? Thompson, yes. Item number 14, award bids for 2024 electrical materials.
Sure. I'll have Taylor speak to this one as well too. Again, overall, this is an annual process for us. We go out and purchase transformers and wire for future projects expected next year. Over the last couple of years, we've had to plan a little differently due to supply chain issues. Some of our cost estimates are based on that, so we're seeing some favorable costs coming up, along with lead times are coming down as well too. So Taylor, I'll let you speak to the rest of it.
Well, last couple years, this item's been pretty doom and gloomy with lead times and pricing well above estimates. But fortunately, this year the transformers and wire that's being awarded is actually coming in under what I had estimated, and the lead times are actually looking good. So it wasn't consistent across all of the manufacturers, but at least there might be a light at the end of the tunnel with the supply chain issues we've been facing. The materials that we're ordering are for capital projects that are planned for next year, others that may pop up, and also trying to replenish our inventory that we've been having to draw down over the last few years. It's looking like most of the transformers should be delivered this next year, while we actually ordered transformers in 2022 that won't be arriving till 2026. So we're working through the process of scheduling the deliveries of all of those, as well as preparing the budget throughout the next few years to make sure we're able to pay for them. Other than that, prices and lead times came in good. It's in the budget for 2024, and things are looking up. Are there any questions from the commission on this item?
Good to hear that some of those things are turning the corner. Yeah.
Very good.
Any other questions or comments? Entertain a motion.
Second.
So I have a motion by Duran, seconded by Paulson, to award the bid for electrical materials. Discussion? Seeing none. Gilbertson?
Aye.
Paulson?
Aye.
Duran? Thompson, yes. Thank you, Taylor. Appreciate it. You must have another speaking part. One more.
One more.
Okay. Two more. Okay. 15. Mr. Schmidt.
Sure. Again, this is just a task order agreement with Houston Engineering. Back in 2014, we hired Houston Engineering to complete our environment, or do some environmental consulting service with us for our spill prevention, control, and countermeasure plan update. Every 5 years, we need to review that. It's been a while. We've got some major projects going on within MPS, so we're going to have them redo it completely or update it completely. The 5-year mark is more just a review internally, and at that point in time, we didn't have any concerns. So we got 2 task orders here, one for miscellaneous services. This helps with easements and other items that we use Houston for, where they'll do our legal or land surveys for those. And then task order 2 is for the spill prevention, control, and countermeasure plan update. Taylor, anything else to add?
Yeah, this also includes the main task order agreement, which is kind of a 5-year agreement that we can terminate at any time. The 2 task orders Travis alluded to are tacked on to that master agreement. Like you said, we have utilized Houston fairly often when we've been dealing with easements, and we figured that it would be more transparent and appropriate to actually enter into a master agreement rather than just getting billed for time and materials. So trying to improve our processes and report to you guys what we're doing.
Wonderful. Questions? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Gilbertson, seconded by Duran, to approve task order agreement for professional services with Houston Engineering and for miscellaneous engineering service. Task order number 2 for environmental consulting services for spill prevention, control, and countermeasure plan update. Discussion. Seeing none. Duran. Paulson.
Yes.
Gilbertson.
Aye.
Thompson, yes. Okay. Item number 16. Mr. Schmidt.
Sure. I'm going to have Jake speak to this. This is task order number 7 with Apex Engineering, and we took all these off tonight trying to get to 5:30, and we're well past that. So, Jake, I'll let you go ahead and speak to your task order. Again, this is for 2024 water main improvement projects. Again, water main replacement. This is the cast iron in the ground we're trying to get rid of.
Yeah, Jake Long, Water Distribution Manager. In 2018, the MPS Commission approved a master task order agreement with Apex Engineering for professional services. This is task order number 7 with Apex for design of MPS 2024 proposed water main improvement projects. Over the past couple months, several months I should say, and years, MPS and city engineering staff have been working together to put together an extensive plan for future projects to strategically perform that align with the MPS water main asset management plan as well as the city's capital improvement project plan. As Travis mentioned before, MPS current strategic goal is to replace approximately 1.25 miles of cast iron. This past year, we're just wrapping up. Our crews did a great job. This year, we're about 1.5 miles of cast iron replacement. As you can see in the table included in the agenda item, another extensive list of projects. All these proposed projects are also included with city CIP roadway improvement projects and some real good projects on there. Add up to be about 1.7 miles this year, and that's based off just a couple projects of the city kind of grew a little bit towards the end of the planning phase. Also another nice project on our list with some lead service lines in the ground that we're going to be looking to replace. Working through some of that stuff with funding, how to get the private and public side replaced. Let's see here. Yeah, and early next year we'll be bringing back those finalized projects for approval. We'll be coming back in either February or March on that. And I guess I'll leave that to any questions you may have.
Questions for Jake? Thank you. Thanks, Jake. I have a motion by Duran, seconded by
Second.
Paulson. To approve task order number 7 with Apex Engineering. Discussion. Seeing none. Duran, Paulson,
Yes.
Gilbertson,
Aye.
Thompson. Yes. Item number 17. Service agreement for Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association.
Sure. I'll start this one off, and then Taylor can add into it. This is his last one for tonight. Again, on an annual basis, Moorhead Public Service for decades has used MMUA, or Minnesota Municipal Utility Association, as their safety management provider or program. Really, this is a typical consent item because it's usually an amendment, but they've got new leadership at MMUA, so they've reviewed the 30-year-old agreement and decided to make some updates to it. So along with that, they're going to have a 15-year fiscal year to get to calendar year fiscal year as well. Their typical year was October to September. So over the next year, they're going to moving to that. So there's some adjustments to this. Attorney John Bolgers has reviewed it as well because of all the changes. Increased cost is about an overall 5% increase, which has been common over the last couple of years. I got that right, Taylor?
I think you said 15-year and meant months, but yeah,
Oh,
it was just
15
that
months,
shift
yes, 15
fiscal year
months,
that you
yes.
were describing.
Sorry.
Like Travis said, John did provide legal counsel on the document. They weren't major issues, and MMUA was trying to use the same agreement with all of the member utilities. So we conceded a couple things, but MMUA has been a very good partner, and we don't believe that they will be in a position where they try to take advantage of the utility in any way. Plus, they're one-year agreements, so the worst that could possibly happen is we'd move on to some other safety organization after that. That's about all I have.
Questions? Seeing none, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Paulson, seconded by Gilbertson, to approve the service agreement with MMUA. Discussion. Duran, Paulson,
Yes.
Gilbertson,
Aye.
Thompson, yes. Okay, item number 18. Performance review. Performance evaluation. Excuse me. Here's a summary of conclusions of the evaluation of the performance of General Manager Travis Schmidt pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 Subdivision 3. On September 19th, 2023, the commission held a closed meeting to evaluate the performance of General Manager Travis Schmidt in accordance with governing law. This commission meeting, which is the next possible open commission meeting following the previously mentioned closed session, Moorhead Public Service is required to summarize the conclusions of the evaluation of the performance of General Manager Schmidt reached by the commission at the end of the September 19th, 2023 closed meeting. Conclusions. General Manager Schmidt did not request that such meeting be open to the public. As a result, the evaluation of General Manager Schmidt's performance took place in a closed meeting as provided under the Minnesota Open Meeting Law. As chairperson of MPS, I now provide a summary of the conclusions reached by the Commission from the September 19, 2023 evaluation. First point, General Manager Schmidt has met and exceeded expectations as a general manager and having a strong working relationship with the Commission. General Manager Schmidt continues to have an excellent working relationship with the City of Moorhead. General Manager Schmidt has provided excellent leadership in changing the culture at MPS, continues to exceed industry standards for utility management and safety, and also being proactive and anticipating the needs of the utility. Moreover, Schmidt has demonstrated good stewardship of MPS's resources. For example, our bond rating recently increased to A2. Don't ever know how to pronounce that, sorry.
A2.
AA2, thank you. General Manager Schmidt has built a great team to meet the needs of MPS in our community. General Manager Schmidt has overseen an increase in community involvement and engagement, making MPS more visible. General Manager Schmidt has driven and continues to drive policy review to ensure MPS policies reflect current regulations and practices. One goal of Mr. Schmidt is to continue to move the AMI project towards completion. The Commission appreciates General Manager Schmidt's service and dedication to and leadership for MPS. Looks forward to continuing his employment with General Manager Schmidt and to work toward the betterment of MPS and the Moorhead community. A salary increase is warranted based on General Manager Schmidt's performance evaluation. Okay, I need to get an approval for the conclusions of the performance evaluation of the general manager.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Gilbertson, seconded by Paulson, to approve the summary of conclusions of the performance evaluation of Mr. Schmidt. Discussion? Okay, seeing none. Duran? Paulson?
Yes.
Gilbertson?
Aye.
Thompson, yes. Item 18B, approve compensation for the general manager. Here we're talking about step increases. I entertain a motion to, or a motion to propose a step increase for general manager. One or two, I need a number. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, there was not.
I move for a step 1 increase.
I'd second that.
Motion by Gilbertson, seconded by Paulson, to increase step 1 as compensation for the general manager. Any discussion? Seeing none, ready for a vote. Paulson.
Aye.
Gilbertson.
Aye.
Duran. Thompson, yes. Okay, that item's taken care of. Thank you very much, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you.
And item number 19, closed meeting, which we don't have a closed meeting, if I'm correct. And upcoming meetings, November 7th and November 21st. On the calendar, opportunities for commissioners are listed below. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Paulson, seconded by Duran to adjourn the meeting. Gilbertson,
Aye.
Paulson,
Aye.
Thompson, aye, Duran. Great, thank you. Thank you for this wonderful meeting, long and well thought.
Hours. For your coffee cup.